Welcome to Authentic Living with Roxanne, a place where we have conscious conversations about things that really matter in our lives. And now here's your host, Roxanne Derhodge.
Our interview last week was so good that we decided to turn it into a two-part series. If you missed last week, you'll find the link in the show notes. It's not mandatory that you listen, but we want to make sure that you don't miss out on this amazing conversation. Hi everyone, it's Roxanne Derhodge with Authentic Living with Roxanne. Today I have a colleague, Julianna Bootsman. Julianna and I actually belong to a same speakers bureau, and we met probably about a month ago and realized we had this luscious conversation about conscious leadership, which is the speakers bureau that we belong to. So I guess the question becomes, what is conscious leadership? And I guess from my definition, it's about where you are aware about the presence that you're bringing into a situation as you lead, from the micro level, from the space that you are leading and what's your frontward facing customer gets, all the way up to your senior leadership team or your CEO level. So Julianna has started her business about over 10 years ago now, and it's called White Box Leadership. I'm going to talk a little bit about that title because I just listened to an amazing video where she explains it. And Julianna she's a chief spiritual officer. I love that title. So Julianna, thanks so much for being here today to share your wisdom with my audience.
Thank you so much for having me, Roxanne.
So let's talk a little bit about Julianna. I always love the backstory about why, today, you're doing this amazing work in corporate culture. What got you wanting almost like a putting a Band-Aid on potentially what the issue is, instead of backing up and saying, well, we're having maybe more conflict, or maybe we're missing deadlines. Let's just do a time management thing or a whatever.
Yeah.
Just kind of backing up and saying, why is it not working well? What's happening? Who are your new people who have left? There's hybrid, there's remote, there's in person. There's so many moving parts, to your point.
Yes.
And if you just kind of create a solution, it might address it, in the interim for a short period of time. And then of course it's going to, I often say it bubbles up, but it might show itself in a different packaging.
Yeah. Yes. And so that is why the work that I do is really working with organizations to building this into the operations of your organization. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what has often sort of been historical in when we're doing the inner work of the organization, or call it professional development or whatever that is it's like one-off courses that people will go to, and they'll help and they'll do something good and you can get a lot of good from it. But for long-term integration and change that really sticks, we know through so many examples, whether it's you're trying to make a lifestyle change within your exercise or your diet or whatever, it's being able to connect into what is actually true for us as an organization, who we are, and how do we continue to know that this is an ongoing thing. And so I work with companies to be able to go and assess and sort of audit them from, like I call it like an energy audit almost. It's like a life force audit. Where is the life force of your organization right now? What's it operating at? And what's going to work best for the rhythm of your organization, for the rhythm and of who your people really are. And then we create and we adapt it for that, because you want this to be able to be just now a part of how your company breathes. We bring it back.
So do you do it at every level when you do the assessment? Are you starting with senior leadership, kind of middle management, frontline, and kind of the interface with the frontward facing customer? Are you doing it at that every level? Because, like, to your point, you have to start at the most senior level, because you can address the middle management, implications. But if you don't have the flow from what's coming from the very top to the, kind of the main engine, which is your middle managers, that's it's good. They're going to buck against each other.
Yeah. Yeah. So ideally that's what we do is we then get to take a cross section depending on the size of the organization and really kind of look at what's really happening here. Where is everybody really at? And so we open up and do like a full conversation with as many people from the organization from different parts that are willing to have the conversation with us. And from there, we get to really hear what, Brene Brown says, connection is to be seen, heard, and valued. So that's the first step that we do is we make sure that we see, hear, and that the people within the organization are valued. And then based on what we actually hear from them, we respond with we've heard what you've shared, and here's how we're responding. And this is what we're integrating into this program. That is customized for the organization. It becomes their conscious leadership program. And the results of what we've seen in the program that we've put through, there's one company that I have as a global organization. So we're working with people from all over the world. So I've got people in my program from Spain and Italy and across the States and different parts of Canada, in Ireland, and just all over the world. And what I find so incredible is that there actually isn't that much difference between what we're all dealing with. Mm-hmm. It comes down to the same things of like feeling of burnout, feeling of, am I worthy? Feeling of the desire to want to be able to always do more, of perfectionism, just all of these things of, simple things of just like physically, I'm not taking care of myself well enough. Spiritually, I'm not attending to myself. It's so much of the same things that show up. But what ends up happening is through the program that we created for this organization and that we create for the organizations, that's rooted in all of the elements of consciousness and compassion, empathy, love, and how to just be able to a high level of self-awareness, emotional intelligence, is the environment that they're working in hasn't changed, but their ability to respond to the environment has changed. And as a result, they feel less stressed. They feel more capable. They genuinely feel happier. The connections amongst the people in the organization, even though so many of them are working virtually in different parts, has gotten better because they're connecting with people through even the programming. They have common language to use. They feel seen and heard in an organization, that they don't feel alone in the fact that, oh, we actually want to operate from a place of love too. And these are the things that matter to us. And I can't believe I work in an organization that also cares about these things. It's sort of like this unspoken goodness that nobody's bringing to the surface because we're all just getting the work done.
We're just trying to get through it. Some people say 20 minutes a day.
Get through the work done.
Quarter to quarter, year to year.
Yeah. And so, and what often happens when you take the time to connect into this, to the conscious leadership work, when you take the time to create those heartfelt connections, it actually gives you back more time. Because the way you're operating elsewhere becomes now more fluid, easy. Conversations become more connected. People feel like they're able to operate from a higher place of their soul. So it's been remarkable. I
think it would free up a lot of time for leaders, right? Because ultimately, if you give functional authority to people, you give them the skills, and you say, there's always going to be conflict. If we accept that there is going to always be differences, but you have capacity to be able to really drill down as people to figure it out, what happens is that they come less to the leadership teams or leaders, and then they kind of realize that when they bring a solution, it's going to be accepted, and you're going to say, wow, good for you, keep doing what you're doing, versus kind of, I talk a lot about, attachment styles in my new book, ROR, Return on Relationships, because ultimately, what is it that all of us want to feel? We want to feel really, really that I'm valued, I'm connected to myself, I'm coming from a deeper space of I'm okay just the way I am. Yeah. And that outpouring of that, creates what I say, it's almost like radiuses of intimacy that, with the same energy and wave coming back at you, which is a nice place. And I think all of us want to feel like, not unlike when you're saying, when you were doing that dance and you just were in that moment, that's complete flow.
Yeah.
you
And one
know?
of the things that so in the programming, what we really work to do is we identify, the organizations they already know their values, but they're not always owning how they're actually acting within those values and how those values are really being lived in action. So what building it into your operating system means is that we don't just profess what our values are, we understand how they're lived in expression and in experience, and we work them and use them to grow us in our organization. And so the program is built in alignment and through the language of the values of the individual company. And
And
so I
when you
think
say you integrate them in, give me an example of that. So
one of the
is it part of your performance review, review? Is it a part of languaging from the, like every level? Like if, let's say I'm a customer and I'm coming to you to a white box, I should be having that interface immediately of getting a sense. So is it that microscopic that you get into from, like you say, beliefs, values, assumptions, mission,
Yeah.
vision, not those beautiful things that you see kind of put up on walls, but really embodying those things.
Well, so one of the organizations that I'm working with, their 3 values are integrity, teamwork, and passion. So we've designed the program that now lives within this organization to be centered around integrity. And so there's 3 modules around integrity, there's 3 around teamwork, and there's 3 around passion. And so all of the work that we do around self-awareness, around emotional intelligence, around leading from the heart, around listening, around really conscious communicate, like all of those pieces, we now draw in, how does this relate to being integrity?
Okay, that's a beautiful.
How is this connected to teamwork? How is this connected to the expression of, like, when we speak about passion? So now those words that are values are now understood in how I own them in my everyday actions, my own self-awareness of who am I being in this moment? And I understand how I'm actually living that value in action. And as an organization, as a team now, or as leaders, you can now speak and understand and see, where does passion come in and how do I actually draw that in? What do we mean now? How do we really understand integrity? When we look at teamwork now, how can we really assess ourselves more fully on how we are really operating as a team?
I really, really like that, because what you're doing is you're not taking the concept of conscious leadership. You're really creating really a marriage of really, this is what you purport you do.
Yeah.
And, starting off, you're starting with your baseline, you're finding out where the gaps are. And then you're integrating that into their mission, vision, and value statements.
Yeah.
So, and then I would think that anybody could kind of say, I don't care if you're in the R&D or you're in a warehouse or you're a person picking up the phone.
Yeah.
You can translate that out, which I think that's brilliant.
And it helps us to grow. And so when I say, when you know your values and you're able to begin to own them. So one of the models that I've created and I teach is called KOA, which stands for KOA, know, own, act. And so a lot of us we know the things that we want to be doing or we should be doing. We know what it means to, to be organized, or we know what it means to have our values, but are we really owning what's happening, what's really going on? And then when we do the owning, when we really go through that middle section of owning it, it becomes, and I love that it's an O, so it becomes almost like a portal. When we go through that O, the action becomes no longer needs to be forced. It almost becomes just natural. It just happens. But we often skip the O and we go away from knowing, and then we try and sort of force this action, and it becomes really hard. It becomes a lot messier. It can, sometimes we drop it off and we just don't do it because we're pushing it rather than it happening naturally, because we've gone through the ownership work of what's really going on. So it takes courage
from an individualistic perspective too, though.
Yes.
That's why I like that, because you talked a little bit about your branding and how you had this beautiful new, pack of things and it looked good, but they had missed the O, which is almost the metamorphosis. So how does that fit for me, the individual? How does it fit for me within my team? How does it fit when I'm seeing my customers? All those things. So I get that space to really sit with that and figure it out. And I may be different to my peer or my supervisor or whatever, but I'm owning it within myself.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I see that conscious organizations will do, and what I encourage companies to really look at when they're looking at their budgets and their books, is what is their investment on marketing, communications, branding, like all that work, and what is their investment on the inner working of their people, and how they're really investing in their people in that way, and that those numbers become flipped. Because when you are owning it, the expression of your brand becomes almost effortless. It just becomes, can't not be that once you've gone through the ownership phase. But what happens when an organization goes through the big branding exercise, all of these things, they present it, they often will lose trust with their organization if they have not really looked at what's really happening in the company. How do our people really feel? Because when you put that out there, they go, oh, well, that looks really nice. And it actually feels good. And we're excited about it, but we're not actually that.
Yeah, that
We're not
makes
quite there yet.
so much sense. And,
So
you know,
then
so
it
that
loses-
flipping of budgets makes
Yeah.
you really invest, because if I buy into, you know, white box,
Yeah.
because I understand how my values are in alignment with me working for your consulting company, versus you just kind of giving me you know, a deck and, you know, all the pretty brochures and the ancillary kind of supporting evidence, but I don't really kind of sit and figure it out. I might like the concept, to your point, but it's more peripheral versus being immersed in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think really being able to look at it from that, and know, like, how are we, and what do we know to be true about who we are in the program. We really focus on the individual as well. And so in an organization, it's important that the people in your company are connected to their own values, and that they have a strong sense of self. Because if they have a strong sense of self, they know how they're able to then have a higher self-awareness, and be able to engage and really know that how to engage with the values of the organization at the highest level of integrity and wisdom and innovation and all of it. And people who don't know their values and don't have a strong sense of self, they can punch the ticket kind of thing, but at some point they're not really not always as reliable in ability to really operate from a high level of performance.
Right. And you're not going to be tapping into their passion and how that impacts just them imbuing themselves into the whole concept of whatever, you know, the company, whatever service they offer.
Yeah.
Now, this is,
I was going to share one other story with you, and we were talking about like ones, because I think it's a really important one that for organizations, and when we talk about return on, you know, you're talking return on relationship, but when we look at like, how does this impact the bottom line and financially? And so I've had clients that have come to me, and they've had people that have been wanting to leave the company, and they'll bring me in to coach with them. And it's happened like, so, you know, this one, she was senior leader in the company, really remarkable. And her and I ended up coaching together. And because she felt like she couldn't live her passion, you know, and so she was going to go off and do mission work and do, you know, really put it somewhere else that felt like it was more impactful in the world than working where she was now. And through the course of us being able to identify, and her getting really clear on her values, how it shows up in expression, she was able to make the connection that the group of people that she is leading right here in this organization, she has the opportunity to impact and serve them at the same level. And they're just as valuable and important, and to make a difference right here where she is, rather than feeling she needed to change and go somewhere else. And so this is the awareness piece. This is the consciousness piece. We supported her to become that much more aware and awake and expand to the possibilities of what's right in front of her, and how she can engage with it in a different way, or more fully as who she really is, to create remarkable impacts. And so she never ended up leaving the organization. And
right.
So
just think about what you saved them.
right.
If you're going to, I mean, to lose somebody that senior and to be able to attract, obviously, with everything going on now with the new resignation, what a gift, really.
Yeah.
She wanted to put it somewhere, but she wasn't making the connections about how she could live her value and still stay where she was. She wasn't making, there wasn't that connection or that lack of awareness. And then doing the conscious coaching was able to have her make those connections. And
so I think that's one of like the real wins that we get from this work, is being able to continually support and understand that it doesn't matter actually where we are. Purpose is about how we show up in every single moment, as just who we really are. And if you are where you are, you have an opportunity to serve in a way. When we are able to come to it from an expansive, when we expand our viewpoint and our perception, rather than keep it so narrow, we are then open to every way that we have the opportunity to give in that moment and equally receive.
What a beautiful story. So, for say leaders or leadership teams that are listening and they're like, oh my goodness, where do we start, Julianna? Like, if you could kind of give a couple of quick little tips if people aren't sure about conscious leadership or conscious culture, what would be 3 little things that they could potentially start to do today, or in the next month, to really kind of get on that way, to starting to be a bit more aware?
Yeah. I'm jokingly and not, I'm like, just give me a call and we can just start with a conversation.
We can make sure they do that.
Yeah. So but it starts with like the awareness within the company itself first. And I believe like, we hold the wisdom within ourselves to discover the answers that we need for what's right in front of us. And so it would be to take a moment to pause and to really honestly, with no fear, no judgment, can you begin to draw some clarity of where are you at really right now? Mm-hmm. How are your people? And what would you say? And so often I use scaling questions on a scale of 1 to 10. How well is your organization? Mm-hmm. 10 being, it is like everybody here is just thriving, their joy, we feel an electricity that's great, where the creativity is flowing, and 0 is, I don't even know what you're talking about. And so, but really being able to scale on like, where are we now? What's really going on? And can we just hold that? No judgment, but can we just be honest about that? And then from there, I look at the organization, I go, where might be just if we were to take one step. Like, I can't actually answer this question for the organization and the people, they will be the only ones that will know. But if we have the willingness to ask the question, one of the poets that I love and follow, and he does great leadership work as well, David White, he says the question we're most afraid to ask is most often the one we most need to ask. So I might offer, like, what are you afraid to look at? What is the question you're afraid to ask? And can you, and inviting you actually to lean into that.
Yeah, nice.
And to be able to sit and go, okay, where might we be? And one of the tools we use is like a wheel, and we look at what are all the moving parts, what are all the things. And if you were to start in just one place, if you were to take one step, and by doing that one step, it will begin to impact all of the rest. What might that be? And then to feel into that. And then really, honestly, one of the things that I think that is transformational is we've been talking about breath in this conversation. If you begin to just take a moment to pause multiple times in a day and just notice your breath. Where is it at? In your meeting with your people.
So simple, but because
simple.
People are they're go that they really don't realize that even just sit in quietness, even if it's for 5 minutes, or to just shut off every sound that reinforce space, and then you're not completely depleted, and then you don't think, oh, here we go again, and you're starting it all over again. So some of those basic things. Yeah. I think about,
I think nature, like the other day I was driving, I have a cat and I'm a newer cat owner, and it's gotten warmer here. And I picked her up from the place that she was at he was at for the week and cat sitter, but it was warm in the car. And I could start noticing the cat was panting more. So you think about like, and so where I'm going with this is about really, can you connect into the breath of your company? Can you connect into the breath of what's happening in a meeting? Can you notice your own breath? And if you were seeing a dog or an animal starting to pant more, How would you respond? How do you take care of the environment so that that doesn't happen? And can you see in your company, where are people starting to pant a little bit too much? Where is the breath feeling constricted? Where are you noticing even in yourself? And begin to bring that into a place that is more full and complete in whatever way. And so what I love about this work is every person in every organization will have their own kind of way in which they can integrate this work.
Right. And the breadth of the organization. That's lovely. That should be the title of a book, Julianna.
Think about it, right? Like imagine like when something is breathing well, you want to be in that space.
Yeah, of course. Of course. It's
nice. And I think about like when you walk into a space and you describe, you're like, oh, I just feel like I can catch my breath here. I just feel like it just like everything just feels a little, we want to create organizations. We want to create meetings. We want to create spaces where when people are in them and they enter them and they leave them, they are breathing a little bit more full with a little bit more ease. Otherwise, what's the point, right? You know, why are we doing any of this if not to be able to support us to breathe and live more fully? So it's an easy way just to notice that awareness and to see like, what is the breath of my company? And it'll be interesting. It's always interesting to see like all of a sudden that little bit of awareness, you're like, oh, nobody is breathing in this meeting.
Everybody's like, holding their breath, or you can see their chest constricted, or you'll see the interactions being a little bit more curt or abrupt, so I think you're right. Just starting to read it. And then the more awareness you have within your body, then you're, if you're grounded, you're going to read better what's within your radius, right? Whatever that 10-foot radius might be in your room. Yeah. So Julianna,
anybody listening could do this. Doesn't matter whether you're in a meeting, whether you're in a one-on-one conversation, whether you're a leader in a company or you're an employee. You get to take the ownership and the leadership of every space you're in, to tune into that, to notice it, to recognize your breath, and to begin to invite that shift. And you'll make changes.
So try that today. That's an amazing tip. Just try to breathe, try to center yourself, and to start to recognize what is different about you when you look out kind of in whatever format you're having a meeting. Yeah. So for anybody wanting more of this juicy stuff, Julianna, where do they get a hold of you so that they could connect, have a call, or even go to your website?
Yeah. So my website is whiteboxleadership.com. There'll be a new one being launched here in a couple of weeks or so, or so maybe by the time, it'll be out. And then LinkedIn, Julianna Bootsman on LinkedIn. And then you can find me on YouTube. If you search Julianna Bootsman, I've got some talks on there. I think that I created them, but sometimes they feel like they come through me. I think they're beautiful. So you can go and watch those and share those as well.
Well, thanks so much for giving us your time today.
Yeah.
So what am I taking away? I think I really, really like that when you look at organizations, you think of what is the breadth of the organization. And I think that's what I'm walking away with today. And something that I will think about as I go off and I deal with different companies or just my team in general. And, what I would say is take the time. When you get into awareness, you can't go back to not knowing. So, the beautiful thing about awareness is once you get there, you go, it's not like you can pretend and go backwards, because then your body and your mind and your soul, like we talked about, knows that there is different. So for everyone listening, that I talk about authentic leadership and relationships. So you can go to roxannedurhodge.com/quiz. with one Q. And what you can do is just assess your relationships either at home or at work. If you'd like to know a little bit more, you do a quick assessment and we'll send you some information. Again, Julianna, thanks so much for your time. Go out there and share that love in all the organizations that you work with. And for anyone wanting more information, please reach out to Julianna.
Thanks for tuning in to Authentic Living with Roxanne, creating the space for positive, healthy change. Roxanne is a keynote speaker, psychotherapist, and coach. To work with Roxanne, visit roxannedurhodge.com/blueprint. We'll see you next time on Authentic Living with Roxanne.